You know, we expect it all. And we expect it to be perfect, and we want it to be just the way we want it to be. And life very often isn't like that, so we end up frustrated and irritated and blaming other people and mad and impatient, so we quit and give up. And the truth is that we have to learn to live with partial fulfillment in every area of our life. There's no perfect parent. There's no perfect child. There's no perfect spouse. You're going to have part of what you want, and then there's always going to be part that you don't want. And to live life fully, we have to learn what we can change and what we have to accept, and live with what we need to live with, and let some things be partially fulfilling and be good enough, even though they're not perfect. And that's a tough one. That's something that's taken a long time for me to understand. And, you know, I think as alcoholics in our relationships, we have a tendency to cut and run when we don't like it. And, you know, you'll get this advice like, well, I wouldn't put up with that. I'd get out of there, you know, that kind of thing. Well, if you keep cutting people out, you're not going to have anybody in your life, you know. And to have a rich life comes from having good relationships. Rich relationships are much more meaningful than a big bank account, you know, or having the best job in the world or anything like that. When it comes down to it, that's what really, really matters. And in all our relationships, we have to learn to hold ambivalent feelings in our heads. And that means love and hate. That means like and dislike. And this can apply to a job as well. And this is one of the marks of mental health and emotional maturity, the ability to hold the opposites in the head at the same time and focus on what's good and go on and keep making things better. Now, emotions. The three toughest emotions that I see people dealing with are anger, fear, and guilt. These are the big three, is what I would say. And a lot of people go back to using, when these emotions come up in the beginning and you're not used to dealing with them, people go back to using to avoid them. Therapy and working the steps can help get you through these feelings and to get to the other side. Remember always that feelings have a beginning, a middle, and an end. And they will end. Whatever you're feeling, even if you think it's going to kill you and it's never going to go away, your feelings are going to change. Or the situation is going to change. Or your perspective on the situation is going to change. One of my favorite prayers when my back is really up against the wall is that I'll ask God to help me either see the situation a new way or change the situation. And seeing the situation a new way is when the feelings change. So, even though you think the feelings are going to hang around and eat you alive, they're not going to. So learn how to sit with your feelings. This is the greatest task of early recovery. And when I say early recovery, I mean years 0 to 5, basically. Like, it is slow and it takes a while. Most relapses, as I said earlier, occur within a short time of leaving treatment, but they can happen at absolutely any time at all. And I've seen relapses happen with people I know who had over 30 years of sobriety. I've had sponsors who relapsed. That's happened to me twice. That was very scary. But relapses can happen to anyone at any time, and that's why in recovery we have to stay very vigilant about doing our work in recovery and to not get complacent. complacency is the beginning of the end. And then all kinds of other things happen after that. Now, psychoanalysts. You've all heard of Freud. Freud talked about two basic drives, eros and thanatos. Okay, we all have these two basic drives within us. Eros is the drive towards love and life, and thanatos is the drive towards death and destruction. And we all have both of those inside of us, and they never go away. So when you're in active addiction, your life is basically in bondage to the thanatos, to the negative energy that's trying to kill you. When you get into recovery, you shift to the other side, to the life force. And when that is even 1% bigger, when you get to 51%, you tip the scale and you can stay in recovery. But that ambivalence is always there throughout the entire lifespan. You may not feel like you want to take a drink tonight, but that desire can be reactivated under the right circumstances. And if you haven't had it happen, and it happens later, it's okay. You know, we are alcoholics and addicts. That's the way we're made, and that's going to happen sometimes. If you have the desire, the important thing is not to keep it a secret. It's to talk about it and get it out of you and deal with it, and then it'll go away. You know, don't try to do it by yourself. So, with the eros and thanatos, the eros is what sustains the will to live. You have always had that your whole life. And just be prepared that at times in your recovery, things are going to happen where there's like a warfare inside of you. And if you keep working the program and keep reaching out for help, you'll stay in recovery, even though it gets really scary sometimes. But this is why relapse can happen at any time. This is why the disease doesn't go away, because the addiction never goes away. It stays part of us. And we have to always remember that and never think that we're cured. A big thing that I really stress with people is self-care. Because there's a lot that we can do to take care of ourselves on a daily basis that makes a huge difference in our bodies, our minds, and our spirits. And I'll just give you a short rundown of what I think the most important things are. Exercise, nutrition, sleep, time management, stress management, social support, meetings, mental health support, and regular medical care. And you all may be thinking of some things to add to that, but those are just the basic bottom line things that not only us, but all people need to do in order to feel healthy. Now that's a long list, and it can take a lot of time. You know, it sounds like you could spend your whole day doing nothing but self-care, but you don't have to do a whole lot of everything, but you do need a little bit of everything. And at times you need more of one thing and not so much of another thing. I think one of the most important things to start with when you're new in sobriety is the exercise. Because that gets your body working again, it gets you through the post-acute withdrawal phase more quickly, it gets things rebalanced, and it alleviates depression and anxiety as well as, if not better than, a lot of medications, with no side effects. So if you're not exercising and you want to start a program of self-care, I'd say start with that. Obviously, nutrition is another big one, and I won't go into all of that, but that's also an area that I'm really very deeply interested in, and know that it makes an enormous difference in our mental health and our spiritual health, and as well as physical health. What most people don't realize is how strong the connection is between nutrition and mental health. Particularly caffeine, sugar, white flour, those types of things. And we live in a culture that is buzzed on caffeine all the time, you know, and, you know, it's a powerful drug, and we all have to decide what's right for us. But, you know, if you have a tendency towards anxiety problems, you might want to stop drinking caffeine, because that really makes it work really, really bad. So. Now I'm going to move on to middle recovery. What I call middle recovery is 5 to 15 years. Okay. I want to start out by telling you about Carl Jung and his 4 archetypes. And this is both for men and women. The 4 archetypes are basically the 4 character, parts of the character, right? So they are, the first one is, for women it's the Madonna, for men it's the father figure. This is the maternal and paternal energy that we all have. The second one is the sexual part of the person and healthy sexuality. The third archetype is the Amazon. And this is the part of the person that is independent and self-sustaining and is not expecting somebody else to support them, but, you know, is willing to work and go out into the world and do something. And the fourth archetype is the playboy and the playgirl. This is the part of the person that wants to play and have fun. Now, as alcoholics, we may or may not have developed all these 4 archetypes. If anybody has watched Sex and the City, that HBO series, it's very interesting because there are 4 women in the series, and each of the women actually represents one of the 4 archetypes. If you put them all together, you have a complete woman. But Carrie is the playgirl, Charlotte is the Madonna, Miranda is the Amazon, and Samantha is the whore, the sexual one. So each of us, men and women, has each of these 4 parts within us. And it's really our responsibility to develop each of these 4. I know, you know, I didn't develop, I feel like now I've developed all of them, but when I was drinking, I had developed the playgirl and the sexual part, and I stopped there. After I got sober, I developed the Amazon, you know, the working and self-sustaining and independent, and I developed the maternal part through nurturing my patients, working with other people, and putting maternal energy into the world that way. So just kind of ask yourself, you know, what of these 4 have you developed? What haven't you developed? What would you like to work on? Because when you've developed all 4, you're self-actualized, and you know you've kind of done a lot of important internal work. And just try not to get lost in one archetype. That's the challenge. Carl Jung says that the first half of life, developmentally, is about becoming a separate person, separating and individuating from your family of origin. He said the second half of life is about the spiritual journey. And, you know, a lot of us, when we come in here, we may be older, but we're still babies. And so we still have to go through the separation, individuation, and all of that growth process after we get sober and become our own people. But then, once you've done all that, where is there to go? That's where you get on the spiritual journey. You know, you see this with a lot of high-achieving people in midlife. They've made the money, they've gotten the job, you know, they have everything they want, and they still feel like there's something missing. Why is that? That's because it's time to go on the spiritual journey. Ultimately, that's the only other place to go once you've gotten all that worldly stuff in place. Now, back to Freud for 1 second. Freud, my husband is a psychoanalyst, so Freud said that the two major components of living life are work and love. Now, my husband, Dr. Ron, adds to that play also, and I agree with that. So we have three components for mental health: the ability to work, the ability to love, and the ability to play. And if we can do all of those three things, then we can have a reasonably satisfying life, and we can be comfortable in our own skin, and we can feel like we're living the way we were meant to live. There's another very famous psychiatrist by the name of Irving Yalom, and he talks about midlife issues that all people have to deal with. And it doesn't matter how old you are. If your development stops when you start drinking, if you get sober, the development's going to pick up again. And at a certain point, you'll come upon these midlife issues. And a lot of people drink to avoid these four essential truths. The first one is that we all are responsible. We all have to create meaning in our lives. If we don't, life feels very meaningless to us. Some people try to create meaning through relationships, some people through work, some people through accumulating stuff, some people through altruistic activities. But one of our central tasks at midlife is to make meaning of our lives. The second essential truth is aloneness. The fact that we are alone in the world, to a certain degree, nothing can take that away. We come in alone, we go out alone, we get to share with other people, but there is a certain amount of aloneness that we all experience, that we all have to deal with, that's part of the human condition, and we have to accept that and not expect it to be perfect all the time. Now, this feeling of aloneness is the root of what causes a lot of clinical anxiety disorders. A lot of anxiety issues are rooted in the underlying feelings of aloneness that need to be dealt with. Especially panic attacks, panic disorder, have to do with fear of abandonment and those kinds of things. So if you or someone you know is struggling, this is something that can be dealt with in therapy. The third essential truth is that we have to deal with death. You're going to die. We all are. And the mental health condition most related to this one is depression. And again, that's something we can come to terms with and be at peace with and live with. And actually, the awareness of death is something that can add a great deal